Hello everyone, a very happy new year. Welcome to Daily News Simplified, the what, why and how of newspaper analysis from the perspective of UPSC examination. Today we are going to discuss the Hindu newspaper dated 2nd of January 2020, Delhi edition. The articles which we are going to cover today are displayed on the screen. Let's begin the discussion. The article has been taken from page number 10, The New Worry of Depleting Diplomatic Capital. Now, this article talks about the impact of domestic decisions and policies on foreign relations. It is important from the perspective of GS2 International Relations syllabus under bilateral, regional, and global groupings and agreement involving India or affecting India's interests. Effect of policies and politics of developed and developing countries on India's interests and Indian diaspora. It is also pertinent to note here that in 2013 mains examination GS paper 2 a question was asked in respect of India-Sri Lanka relations, discuss how domestic factors influence foreign policy. So a question along similar lines have been asked in the past year. So let's now discuss the key points highlighted by the author in this article. Now, author does a comparison between the Modi government's 5 years from 2014 to 2019 and the 1 year in the recent government which was elected in 2019. Now, according to the author, in pre-2019 era, the main focus of Ministry of External Affairs as well as foreign policy was on improvement of bilateral ties. And for the improvement of bilateral ties, many thorny issues were ignored by the Modi government. For example, immediately after taking oath, visit of Indian Prime Minister to USA showed a great bonhomie between Modi and Obama, and it also led to the genesis of Indo-Pacific policy. Now it is important to note here that although Obama administration had played a great role in denying visa to Prime Minister Modi when he was a Chief Minister of Gujarat, but even then after becoming Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi ignored those past issues. As far as the improvement of relations with China is concerned, even though there was a lot of domestic anger against China because of its continued support to Pakistan, Mr. Narendra Modi pursued good relations with China, and those 5 years, and especially the initial years of the first term, a great emphasis was laid on neighborhood relations. Now, as soon as the second term of Prime Minister Modi has started, there are a lot of decisions which the government has taken which has brought India into limelight of global affairs. Now these are abrogation of Article 370, Citizenship Amendment Act and NRC. Now, according to the author, these decisions of the government have been called into question by several countries and international organizations. And these decisions are not only depleting India's global capital, but they also might lead to decisions by other countries which might impact India in long run. Let us understand how. Now, these three decisions have led to reduction in bipartisan support for India, especially the support for India in Democratic Party, which is now the opposition party, has reduced significantly. Now there have been a lot of statement of concerns from both State Department as well as bipartisan committees. As far as US Congress is concerned, they recently conducted a hearing on the ongoing issue in Kashmir, especially related to freedom of speech and expression and internet ban. Now, US Congress also amended Foreign Appropriation Act to include a line on Kashmir, which is a significant step as far as USA foreign policy is concerned. Now, moving on to European Union, the United Kingdom held a parliamentary debate on Kashmir issue, as well as it dominated the campaign for the position of prime ministership in United Kingdom. Now, as far as the relationship with European Union is concerned, you might be aware that Indian government invited far-right member of European parliaments to Kashmir as an observers, but the same access to Kashmir was denied to other member of European parliaments who belong to other political ideologies. Now, this has led to worsening relationships with European Union and many other countries as well. Now, as far as the relationship with neighborhood is concerned, Pakistan has obviously raised a lot of questions on Citizenship Amendment Act as well as on abrogation of Article 370 and NRC. But that is not so much of concern as we anyways have very bad relationships with Pakistan. But author emphasizes the worsening relationship with Bangladesh, especially provided that Bangladesh government led by Sheikh Hasina has been so favorable to India. And that is where the real damage lies. If we analyze the relationship with Bangladesh under the current regime, we have had abolition of terror safe havens which were creating a lot of trouble in our northeast. Then the border killings across India Bangladesh border have stopped, and the acrimony between the border guards of Bangladesh and BSF have stopped. The historic land boundary agreement had given a big boost to India Bangladesh relationships, as well as we have a lot of transport connectivity and energy related agreements in which India is helping out Bangladesh as well as seeking its help to access our northeastern states. Also, on an international fora, Bangladesh has always sided with India, and the relevant example is the defense of Bangladesh in favor of India at Organization of Islamic Countries or OIC. Now, what has caused the relationship to deteriorate so rapidly? Now, first is the inclusion of Bangladesh as a country of origin in Citizenship Amendment Act. As we know that the act uses extremely harsh lines for Pakistan, Afghanistan and Bangladesh and labels them as countries which persecute minorities. Hence, the official position of India is that Bangladesh is one such country which is not able to protect its minority. And the second is that we are willing to provide citizenship to persecuted minorities, but we have excluded Muslims, and since Rohingyas are Muslim, they are not going to be eligible for the citizenship. And a long-term expectation of Bangladesh from Indian government has been to accommodate Rohingyas in India. And these two issues have led to deterioration in the relationship of Bangladesh and India. Now, government has dismissed all of the above criticisms with the simple line that they constitute interference in India's internal affairs. And according to the government, even if countries issue statements and world bodies pass resolutions on detentions and internet ban in Kashmir, there is no reason for India to worry at all. But according to the author, there are substantial reasons which might force India to have a serious look at these criticisms. Now, according to the author, there are certain steps taken by the international bodies and the national bodies of foreign countries which could lead to significant damages. For example, US Commission for International Religious Freedom USCIRF has recommended sanctions against our Home Minister Mr. Amit Shah. And it is important to note here that this is the same body which had recommended the visa ban on then Chief Minister Mr. Narendra Modi, and it led to around 10 years of ban on entry in the United States for Mr. Modi. So this could immediately impact the freedom of travel for our Home Minister. Now, US Congress has already held a hearing, and as we all know that being extremely powerful, for example, they can block defense sales to India, for which we are showing a great interest in transfer of technology, as well as they can interrupt our defense ties with Russia by sanctioning S-400 missile systems, and hence we should take the criticism of US Congress very seriously. Now, as far as the agencies of United Nations and their criticism is concerned, they become a platform for India bashing and provide opportunities to Pakistan and various other nations hostile to Indian interest to highlight internal issues on global platforms. Now, as far as other impacts of such policy decisions by Government of India are concerned, they lead to a lot of visit cancellations, and the case in point is the cancellation of visit of Japanese Prime Minister Mr. Shinzo Abe to India. Now, greater scrutiny of internal troubles by global media leads to decline in foreign tourists, as well as a lot of diplomatic resources are wasted just to counter the narrative which is being propagated against India. While this diplomatic resource can be utilized in other fruitful activities, according to author, in last 5 to 6 months, all their work has been focused on how to counter the narrative which has been generated against India. So overall, such policies lead to reduction in India's diplomatic capital. And according to author, this capital is a complex combination of the goodwill the country has banked on over decades as a democratic, secular, stable power. We should not be taking such steps which undermine such a diplomatic capital built over such a long period of time. So, this article gives you a perspective on how domestic affairs or domestic policies and actions of national government can impact foreign relations. Let's now move on to the next article. This article appears on page number 10 in the form of editorial, The Need for a Single Energy Ministry. Now, this article is important from prelims as well as mains point of view. Now, for prelims examination, we will try to understand how the ministries and departments under the Government of India are reorganized or reshuffled. But before that, we shall deal into the main points which have been raised in the article. And then we will look into the Niti Ayog's recommendations with regard to these objections. Author talks about the energy governance or the sector in India and highlights two main issues with the sector. Now, the first is that the governance of this sector is extremely fragmented and the data collection system of energy sector in India is also extremely fragmented. The governance of the energy sector right now is being taken care by five different ministries: Ministry of Coal, Power, New and Renewable Energy, and Petroleum and Natural Gas. There is also Department of Atomic Energy, but we shall not go into that because that is a ministry crucial for national security as well. But these are the four main ministries along which the governance of the energy sector has been fragmented. Apart from ministries, there are multiple regulators which deal with this sector. The important ones are Directorate General of Hydrocarbons and Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board NGRB. Now, as far as the data collection is concerned, since we have five different ministries and hence there is no single agency for collection of data, and each ministry and department collect data which are relevant to their particular and specific sectors. Now, this leads to multiple agencies collecting various kinds of data. Now, these data are collated by Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, but such a collection or collation is very sporadic and not periodical. Now, these two in combination lead to the following problems. Now, the first problem is the problem of coordination among various ministries and departments. As the data is fragmented and policies are made individually for each and every ministry, it leads to lack of coordination among them. Then, next problem which emerges is suboptimal utilization of resources. All the ministries work under silos and do not interact with each other, and hence it leads to duplication of efforts, or it might also leads to lack of any effort in certain sectors and hence suboptimal utilization of resources. Now, third problem is due to the lack of coordination and suboptimal utilization of resources, India's energy security gets compromised. The last problem is that each ministry promotes its own fuel. Now, the problem is that ministry's agenda do not align with the long-term goals of Government of India or Indian state. For example, coal might be a good fuel, but it is not clean, and promotion of coal to the detriment of other sources of energy might create pollution and hinder India's objectives for climate change, and hence it is not in the best interest of the country to promote such thing. Hence it is important for us to look into draft energy policy in which Niti Ayog has recommended the creation of unified energy ministry. Now, under draft energy policy, Niti Ayog made two specific recommendations regarding this. Now, the first was the creation of unified Ministry of Energy by merging all the ministries in existence right now except for Department of Atomic Energy. Hence, these all shall be merged into single unified ministry. Now, the proposed ministry will have six agencies under it to handle various aspects of energy security. To name all of them, first, Energy Regulatory Agency, Energy Data Agency, Energy Efficiency Agency, Energy Planning and Technical Agency, Energy Schemes Implementation Agency, and Energy Research and Development Agency. So all these agencies together will take care of all aspects of energy and will not fragment the governance into coal, power, new and renewable, petroleum and natural gas, and so on. Now, these two, according to the Niti Aayog, will lead to integrated approach to energy security, which was missing earlier. It will lead to quicker policy response from the government as well as holistic data collection of the sector. Now, author quotes two case studies to support the argument of reorganization of ministries and merging them into single one. Now, the first is a recent decision by the government of India to create Ministry of Jal Shakti. Now, the Ministry of Jal Shakti was created by integrating Ministry of Water Resources, River Development and Ganga Rejuvenation, and Ministry of Drinking Water and Sanitation. So, government felt that it is important to club various ministries dealing with the water into one, and hence this could form the basis for creation of integrated Ministry of Energy. And the second case study is the global experience in the developed world. According to the author, developed and efficient countries such as USA, UK, France, and Germany have vibrant, diverse, and prolific energy sectors administered by single ministry or department. And hence, this validates the claim of the author that there is indeed a need to merge the ministries. Now, the discussion so far is important from the perspective of mains examination. But from the point of view of prelims examination, it is important for us to understand how the ministries and departments under the government of India are reorganized. So, we'll first start with the Constitution of India. Under Article 77, Clause 3, the President shall make rules for the more convenient transaction of the business of the Government of India and for the allocation among ministries of the said business. So, the Constitution has given the power to reorganize the ministries and their businesses to the President of India, and this can be done easily by amending the rules. So it is important to note here that no amendment of law or constitutional amendment is required in order to reorganize the Government of India and its business. And hence accordingly, Government of India Allocation of Business Rules 1961 have been laid down, providing for the subjects allocated to different ministries and how the business allotted to the ministries should be transacted. The distribution of subjects among the departments shall be as specified in the first schedule to the allocation of business rules and shall include all attached and subordinate offices or other organizations including public sector undertakings concerned with its subject. Now, it is important to note here that the Cabinet Secretariat is responsible for the administration of Government of India Allocation to Business Rules 1961. Let's now move on to the next news. This article appears on page number 10 and it talks about the infrastructure push given by the current government at the center. There are two key terms which have been used in this particular article. The first is National Infrastructure Pipeline and the second is the constitution of the task force to identify the projects to be implemented under National Infrastructure Pipeline. Before going into details, we'll first try to understand the background which necessitated such changes. Now, the first is lack of infrastructure in the country has been the binding constraint on the rapid economic growth. And recently, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has set the target of $5 trillion economy GDP by 2025. And for achieving such an ambitious target, we need a rapid rate of growth per annum. And to enable that, we need to push the infrastructure spending by more than what is being done right now. According to the task force, it will need more than 100 lakh crore of investment on infrastructure in next 5 years. Now, to give you an idea how massive this infrastructure spending is, the total spending on infrastructure between years of 2008 and 2017 was 100 lakh crore. And now we are talking about almost the same amount of investment in just a matter of 5 years, which means that we need to double the investment on infrastructure. So accordingly, the central government had set up a task force to draw up this plan under the chairmanship of Secretary of Department of Economic Affairs under Finance Ministry. And task force has come up with National Infrastructure Pipeline. Now, the main objective of National Infrastructure Pipeline would be to enable infra investment in an efficient manner. And the task force has come up with the reports in which they talk about the projects, the status of implementation of these projects, and the financing by the various stakeholders. Now, as far as the methodology which has been adopted by the task force is concerned, they have gone through each and every project which was more than 100 crore of rupees, and each project was assessed individually on the criteria of viability as well as its relevance. Now, these projects in the first round have been identified under the sectors of energy, road, railways, and urban infrastructure. Now, we should focus on one thing, which is that under National Infrastructure Pipeline, the projects will not only be greenfield but also brownfield investment, meaning that they could be an old infrastructure which need renovation. The status of implementation of these various projects have been categorized into implementation, under development, and conceptual, and we can see that 42% or the majority of projects are under implementation stage, while only 31% are under concept stage. Now, as far as the financing of these infrastructure projects under NIP is concerned, the task force has set up a formula of funding according to which the center and the state will contribute equally 39% each, and rest of the 22% will come from the private sector. Now, it needs to be highlighted that the projects under NIP will be implemented by individual ministry and departments, and they would be responsible for monitoring of the projects so as to ensure their timely and within cost implementation. So NIP will not take the implementation procedure, they will just monitor the funding as well as the implementation state so as to remove the bottlenecks which are being faced by the infrastructure sectors. Now, this article talks about four specific obstacles which NIP might face as far as the implementation of the projects is concerned. Now, the first is the constant review or the periodic review of the infrastructure implementation process. Now, so far, National Infrastructure Pipeline is just like a project report which contains the list of infrastructure under various sectors and the stage of implementation and the financing needs of each of them according to their relevance and viability. Now, if there is no constant monitoring or the periodic review of such projects, this might end up as mere collation and listing of projects and nothing more. Now, the second problem is the amount of investment which has been allocated to both center and state, and it is 39 lakh crores into two, which is one portion of center and second of state. Now, you might be aware of the current fiscal situation of both center and the states, and it is highly constrained as far as the spending is concerned. They both have individually breached their fiscal targets for the current year, and the scope of further investment is extremely low. So, one of the major constraints of National Infrastructure Pipeline would be to manage such massive amounts of investment from government spending. Also, 22% of the component of these infrastructure investments would come from private sectors, and provided the current state of economy as well as large debts of private sector and huge massive NPAs being created in the private sector, it is highly doubtful whether they will be able to shell out 22 lakh crores in matter of 5 years. And last but not the least is the cooperative federalism or the cooperation from states, which becomes extremely important in implementing any infrastructure projects. We have seen in the past that due to the lack of this particular coordination among the states and between state and the center, many important infrastructural projects have been stalled, which have also become a major reason for creation of massive NPAs in energy sector. So, apart from management of finances and periodical review, an important challenge for the center would be to garner the cooperation from various states. So, this article becomes extremely important from the perspective of mains examination as it highlights the challenges under National Infrastructure Pipeline. With this, we shall move on to the next news. Next, we are going to discuss two articles published on page number 1 and page number 9 respectively. They both deal with the press conference held by the director of ISRO yesterday. Now, there are a lot of useful information which can be extracted from this news. So, what we shall do is that we will first understand what Project Gaganyaan is all about and what are its various components, mainly the rocket, crew module, care, crew escape system, as well as environmental control and life support system. Then we will understand what Chandrayaan 3 is going to be and what were the causes of failure or the crash of Vikram lander under Chandrayaan 2 mission. And a very important prelims information from this article needs to be highlighted right here is that ISRO is now building its second launch pad in Thoothukudi district of Tamil Nadu. So far, ISRO had only one launch pad at Sriharikota, Arunachal Pradesh, which is situated beside the Pulicat Lake. Now it is going to have a second launch pad as well. The relevant UPSC syllabus has been displayed on this screen. A question asked in 2019 mains examination under GS3 paper was, what is India's plan to have its own space station and how will it benefit our space program? First, let us understand the main objectives of mission Gaganyaan. In past month, Union Cabinet approved a 10,000 crore rupees fund for India's first human space flight program known as Gaganyaan. So it needs to be highlighted here clearly that Gaganyaan is not going to be space station. It is just going to be a project for first human space flight program of India. It shall have three components, under which two shall be unmanned and one shall be a human space flight, which will be launched in December 2021. Now, as far as the carrying capacity of the space flight is concerned, ISRO plans to send three astronauts to a low Earth orbit of 300 to 400 kilometers on GSLV Mark III vehicle. So keep in mind that a low Earth orbit is characterized as one having an altitude of 300 to 400 kilometers, and the carrier will be very powerful GSLV Mark III, which has been indigenously built by ISRO. So apart from humans, is ISRO going to launch humanoids as well? Yes, ISRO is planning to launch humanoids before it can launch the humans into space for carrying out microgravity experiments. The successful implementation of Gaganyaan mission would propel India's image in global forum, as it would be fourth country to send such a mission after Russia, USA and China. Now let us understand few important technologies which will be essential for successful conduct of Gaganyaan mission. Now, the first and most important component would be a rocket or a carrier which would take the crew module into the space. Now, GSLV Mach 3, which is an indigenously built cryogenic engine, is capable of delivering such a heavier payload into the space. Now, as far as the cryogenic engine is concerned, these are the engines which work on fuel stored at a very low temperature, and it enhances its efficiency both in terms of range as well as the payload. And this is the rocket which will take the crew to the low Earth orbit of 300 to 400 kilometers. Now, as far as the crew module is concerned, this will be the capsule in which our astronauts will be carried into low Earth orbit. So the rocket is going to carry two kinds of modules. The first is crew module and the second is service module. Now this service module will carry many other technologies and safety features which are designed to protect this crew module, and crew module in itself will house the astronauts. As far as the people who will go into space, now that selection procedure has already been conducted and people from Indian Air Force have been selected. And now these people are being sent to Yuri Gagarin Space Center, Russia for further training. Crew module atmospheric re-entry technology is the main thing which separates the normal satellites from a manned mission. Now you see, satellites that are launched for communication or remote sensing are meant to remain in the space, and they are not expected to come back to the Earth. However, a manned spacecraft needs to come back to the surface. And while entering or re-entering into Earth's atmosphere, the spacecraft needs to withstand very high temperature created due to friction. And hence, it is extremely important for the overall system to have a CARE technology or crew module atmospheric re-entry technology. Now, as far as the progress of ISRO is concerned, it has already conducted a successful experiment in 2014 itself, and hence ISRO is ready with this technology. Next in line is crew escape system or pad abort test. Rockets in themselves are extremely complicated machines, and due to a minor error, a whole mission can collapse and burn into ashes in few seconds. And since these are manned missions, we need to be extra cautious, and hence a crew escape system has been designed, which is an emergency accident avoidance measure designed to quickly get astronauts and their spacecrafts away from the launch vehicle if a malfunction occurs during the initial stages of launch. And it is heartening to note that ISRO has completed first successful test of this technology as well. So we saw that as far as these three technologies are concerned, ISRO is ready with the launch vehicle, which is GSLV Mach 3. ISRO is also ready with CARE as well as pad abort test crew escape system. Now, for manned missions, in order for the humans to survive in this space, crew module carrying these human beings must have conditions inside suitable for humans to live comfortably. And for that, environmental control and life support system has been designed. It will carry out four main tasks. First is obviously maintenance of steady cabin pressure and air composition, without which humans can't survive. It will also efficiently remove carbon dioxide and other harmful gases automatically. It will control the temperature and humidity of the cabin, as well as it will manage other parameters and take immediate action, for example, fire detection and suppression. Now, this is the only technology with which ISRO is not ready so far, and the layout, design, and configuration of this technology has been finalized, but it has not been tested yet. So this is that component of Gaganyaan which needs to be immediately prioritized by ISRO. Now let's have a look at Chandrayaan 3. Now yesterday during press conference, Dr. K. Sivan announced Chandrayaan 3, which means the third mission to moon. And this will again be a soft landing mission after the failure of Vikram lander Chandrayaan 2. Now as far as some background information about Chandrayaan 2 is concerned, it had two components. One was orbiter and the second was lander. Now orbiter is still in the orbit and sending us data, but the lander, if you remember, had crashed while touching down on the surface of the moon. Had that soft landing been successful, ISRO's moon lander would have been the first to land in the southern hemisphere of moon's surface. Dr. K. Sivan elaborated upon the reasons which led to the crash of Vikram lander and also stated that ISRO has corrected this problem for effective landing of Chandrayaan 3. Now, what was the reason behind the crash of Vikram lander? Now, according to ISRO, the most likely cause would have been the failure of the design team to take into account the spike in speed which will occur once the lander reaches close to the surface of the moon, which basically means that as soon as the altitude of Vikram lander decreased and it reached near to the surface of the moon, its speed increased manifold, and the navigation control and guidance mechanism system of the Vikram lander had not been designed to keep into account such a spike in speed, and hence this led to the crash. So after having discussed Gaganyaan and Chandrayaan, let's now move on to the next news. This news has been published on page number 8. Kerala for steps to curb alien plants growth in Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. Now, Kerala Forest and Wildlife Department is gearing up to adopt comprehensive steps to arrest the rampant growth of invasive alien species, and especially tree species like Senna spectabilis in the forest areas of Nilgiri Biosphere Reserves. UPSC in the past years have asked two questions related to invasive alien species. Now, the first question was asked in 2012. Which of the following can be threats to the biodiversity of a geographical area? Option 1 is global warming, which is correct. The second is fragmentation of habitat, also leads to the changes or threats to the biodiversity. Third option is invasion of alien species, and this also leads to the threats to the biodiversity, which is the main concern of this article. And the fourth is promotion of vegetarianism, and there is no such direct correlation between promotion of vegetarianism and threats to biodiversity, and hence this option is incorrect. And hence the right answer is A, 1, 2 and 3 only. And the second question was asked in 2018 prelims examination. Why is a plant called Prosopis julifera often mentioned in news? And the right answer is B. It tends to reduce the biodiversity in the area in which it grows. Now, this question was picked up from a current affairs where Delhi government had given not to clear the central ridge of the non-native trees in the hope that the area's original flora, which is called the lungs of the city, as well as the fauna can be restored. So our discussion regarding invasive alien species shall be guided by these two questions. And as you might decipher that only a basic level information is needed for environment and ecology questions asked in prelims examination. So first what we'll do is we'll understand invasive alien species, and then we will discuss main characteristic of this particular plant known as Senna spectabilis, as it has become extremely important for 2019 prelims examination. Now starting with what are invasive alien species, these are species whose introduction or spread outside their natural present or past distribution threatens biological diversity. As we know that almost all the varieties of plants and animals have their natural distribution. Now due to various factors, some of the species start spreading into areas which are not traditionally their habitats or natural distribution, and hence it leads to the threats to the biodiversity of the original flora and fauna of that place. Now, there are certain common characteristics of invasive alien species which enable them to grow rapidly outside their natural distribution. Now, the first is that they should have rapid rate of reproduction and growth, which enables them to outcompete the local fauna and flora. The second is that they should have high dispersal ability. Now, this dispersal ability refers to both the movement of animals, plants, bacteria, or fungi from their birth site to their breeding site, as well as the movement from one breeding site to another, and hence high dispersal rate or high dispersal ability is very important criteria to enable invasive alien species to spread outside their traditional natural habitat. Now, third and most important characteristic is phenotype plasticity, which means that ability of these organisms to adapt physiologically to new conditions. Now, in simple terms, it refers to some of the changes in organisms' behavior, morphology, and physiology in response to a unique environment. So, when an organism moves out of its natural distribution, obviously the surrounding environmental conditions also change, and hence the change in morphology and behavior becomes inevitable to adapt to certain conditions. And all those organisms which easily adapt to the changing environment conditions are best suited as invasive alien species. And the last characteristic is that their ability to survive on various food types and in a wide range of environmental conditions. This enables them to gather or forage for the food easily or adapt to the changing environmental conditions. Now, invasiveness is assessed by the ability of the species to successfully invade a foreign territory. So, for example, article talks about the threats this new species known as Senna spectabilis is posing to the local biodiversity of Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve, and hence we can say that its invasiveness is extremely high as it has replaced a significant portion of the forests. So these are the few basic information about invasive alien species and their characteristics. Let's now focus on this particular type of plant, Senna spectabilis. This plant was introduced by humans as it was planted as trees alongside roads in Wayanad. Now, due to massive flowering and drying of bamboo species in the Wayanad, lots of open spaces were created, which were later on occupied by this particular plant. Now let's talk about the impact which this particular plant is having on the biodiversity. There are three main ways in which it is doing so. The first is the thick foliage arrests the growth of other indigenous species of trees and grass. Now this causes the food shortage for wildlife population, especially the herbivores. More so because local wildlife does not feed on the leaves of this particular tree as it is not palatable for them, and hence it especially threatens the herbivores. Also, the allelochemicals produced by this plant adversely affects the germination and growth of native species. Now, what is allelochemicals? They are chemicals produced by living organisms that exerts a detrimental physiological effect on individuals of another species when released into the environment. Now, it is a mechanism to curb the competition among the organisms or species, and hence this particular plant also releases such chemicals which threatens the germination and growth of native species. Now, on the screen you can see the map of reserve forests as well as important tiger reserves and biosphere reserve in southern part of the country. The article talks about the spread of this particular species. Let's trace it on the map. So it started from Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve and it has spread to Bandipur Tiger Reserve, which is this, as well as Mudumalai, which is here. So you can see the rapid rate of spread which this alien species is showing in the parts of Tamil Nadu, Karnataka as well as Kerala. Now the Kerala government has so far focused on the physical methods to tackle the issue for the past 5 years, but it has not shown any impact on the spread or the growth rate of this species, and hence they are now planning to adopt an integrated method by combining the physical as well as chemical measures to solve this problem. Now this discussion is more important for prelims examination as it deals with the basic information regarding invasive alien species and the plant Senna spectabilis. Let us now solve some questions for prelims examination. So the first question is, which of the following statements are correct about Gaganyaan? The first option is the launch vehicle for the mission would be GSLV Mach 2, which is incorrect as it would be GSLV Mach 3. And the second option is the technologies needed for human space flight have not been tested by ISRO so far, which is also incorrect. We saw that apart from one technology, all others have been tested, and hence both are incorrect, and the right answer is D, none of the above. Next question is, which of the following statements are correct about invasive alien species? First option is they have rapid reproduction and growth rate, which is correct, and this is what enables these species to outcompete the local flora and fauna. And the second option is that they have low dispersal ability, which is incorrect as the dispersal ability of these invasive alien species is extremely high, and hence the right answer is A, 1 only. Now this question has been taken from the first discussion which we had, which dealt with the impact of domestic politics on our foreign relations. Now, which of the following statements are correct about United States Commission on International Religious Freedom in news recently? The first option is it is a US federal government commission. It is correct. And the second option is the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom's principal responsibility are to review the facts and circumstances of violations of religious freedom internationally, which is also correct, as it appears in the news with respect to the reports it releases time to time which deal with the issues related to religious freedom and persecution of minorities across the world. And last option is it makes policy recommendations to the president only. Now this option is incorrect as the policy recommendations of USCIRF are not only made to president but also to Secretary of State and the Congress. And hence this option is incorrect, which leads us to the right answer 1 and 2 only, option B. With this we come to the end of today's DNS. Let's have a look at the question of the day.